YouTube, but whatever.
I got it up, man.
All right, all right, all right. Everybody with us? Let's get live in the comment section here. If you guys are in the house. Okay, cool. So it looks like they're popping in. Perfect. Welcome to 3D Beast Academy's Community Portfolio Reviews. I am Jel Musi, your humble host for today. We're going to be breaking down your portfolios that you submitted. And if you're just joining us live on the air, I will have some links. That way you could basically jump on my list. The way this worked and the way that I got these portfolios in here is that I sent out the emails to my list. So you got to be on the list to get your name, obviously, here on my little form for me to review. So I'll be explaining that as these proceedings go on. But first and foremost, I'm going to introduce my co-host here. This is Dustin Valkema from CG Hacks. He's a 3D artist. Yeah, he's a 3D artist. He's a Maxon Certified Trainer, and he's worked in product design and renders for big companies like Home Depot. So I'm going to let him get on the ones and twos for 1 second here and just introduce himself as well.
I knew that was coming. Hey guys, I'm Dustin Valkema. I'm a photographer and digital artist. Actually, a lot of people know me more for my cosplay photography business than the 3D side, but I've worked in the 3D industry for about 15 years, both as a studio artist and as a freelancer. And yeah, it's been pretty great. You know, I've learned a lot. There's been a lot of stuff going on. And now I've kind of flipped gears as a full-time freelancer, and I started a new company called CG Hacks, which JL just mentioned. And you know, there we've got a bunch of different courses that are coming soon. I've got stuff in the works, but we've also got a bunch of different tools for Photoshop and 3D artists, surface imperfections, HDRIs, gobos, different things like that. So there's plenty of stuff there to take advantage of. So JL is kind of browsing through the site right now. But you can actually use the code 3D Beast for an extra 30% off of our current sale that we have going on. So I'll put that in the chat. So that's at cbhacks.com. Yeah.
And probably the best way to what I'm going to be doing too is I'm going to be emailing everybody an exclusive discount code. The best way you can do this is basically just jump on my list here. I threw the link in there, and that way this is twofold. You'll get the discount codes, and also when the next portfolio comes up, you'll be one of the first ones notified. What I do with people on my list, I show them love, and before I announce this to the public, I give everybody a heads up because this is a first come first serve. So we're gonna dive into the reviews in 1 second. I'm just gonna explain how this works. These are first come first serve. There's about 40 people on my list here. I have 40 tabs. So we're going to try to move as quickly as possible. You're going to have about 10 seconds. So when you see your portfolio pop up, you're going to say, I'm here. And that way I know that you're here. I can review this. I'm not going to review portfolios of people that are not here. So you got about 10 seconds. If you got to dip out and hit a bathroom break or something like that, probably the best timing would be right when one of these comes up. You got about 5 minutes. We're going to do about 5 minutes each round, each portfolio. So I'm going to try to get as many of these in as humanly possible in the shortest amount of time. All right. So without further ado, let's get to it. And I'm going to just close these out. And we got Leighton Porter here. So I just need you to get in this chat. Let me know you're here. You got 10 seconds, brother.
Oh, man, the clock is ticking.
Mr. Porter, you here with us? All right, boom. All right, perfect. So Leighton, he's actually part of the 3D Beast Academy as well. He's joined up, so that is awesome. But he's submitting this guitar here, and I like it. It looks to be like maybe a game asset by just looking at the resolution and the fast setting, which is fine. Something that I would probably prioritize is on these like bigger surfaces. You see how dense you are here on this little bit of detail, but even though you're probably trying to keep that poly count relatively down, it's such a large shape that I would probably show some more love because you see like how this reads. You could see the faceting pretty far away. So obviously with curved surfaces versus flat, you're going to have to spend, this is something that game artists say quite a bit, but it even applies to sub-D modeling as well. You're going to have to spend on the curves and save on the flats, right? So you probably want to actually divide this or just start with more divisions. That way you're not getting such faceting here, right? Because if we look at this wireframe, and this is great that you included this, you see how large this is, but on these smaller shapes, right, that are not going to read as well, you probably could have saved some polygons if that's what you were opting for. Presentation-wise, I think this is awesome. Looks like you added some depth of field here. You have this blurred, so some of these shots are very good, and depth of field is a great way to basically lead the viewer's eye to areas of detail that you want to focus on. So I think your presentation overall, these close shots is good. You definitely did a great job with the texturing, and your UVs look really, really clean. One thing about these shells, when you're texturing, it looks like you use substance. If you want to get any bit of directional grain, just to save you some heartache, it might be good to go up and down on these. And maybe on some of these shells, you could probably use the strain tool. And that way, anytime that you strain UVs, you could pack everything a lot tighter. Because obviously, this looks like you're just using one UV tile. But honestly, your breakdowns are pretty good. And this is, again, going back to what I was saying, the faceting here. I think you could spend a little bit more polygons, make this shape a little bit more rounded. Dustin, you had me on time because I didn't hit the timer.
No, I didn't have your time. That's all right, though. We'll talk about this one. I mean, honestly, from my standpoint, what I do a lot more than not is actually like the materials, like look development and post production. I'm big into Photoshop compositing and all of that stuff. So it's pretty cool for me to see the different passes and things here that were all used for this. I think overall, you pretty much nailed it. I think the only thing that I would do from maybe like a product standpoint is really work on those UVs and getting those things straightened out so that you can place different materials there, pretty much how you did. But the difference that I've come across in my line of work is being able to actually do additional things in Photoshop or kind of procedurally, like during the shader development and whatnot, being able to very quickly orient those UVs and get all of that wood grain and stuff flowing in the same way. But being baked in and all like this, it's pretty solid, man. I like all of the intricate details that you put into it. So
cool. All right, Leon. So hopefully that helped. You got some great insights here, but keep rocking that. I think your portfolio's on the right track. Dustin, I sent you a messenger, so check that out. All right, so this is Helen. Helen comes. Helen, I need you to be here actually, so we'll do this fair. Helen, you are you in the live? Just type in here in the chat. All right, perfect. So Helen is a certified 3D modeling beast. She came through the academy. Let me actually just put my star here. She came through 3D Beast Academy, and she's actually 70 years young, 70 years plus. And she actually learned the whole pipeline rather quickly, just going through really the Hard Surface Hero program, what came to be the Hard Surface Hero program. But she's a really good modeler. I know her pretty good by now. So her modeling, her UVs have really, and her texturing have improved. But basically the presentation could be timed up a little bit here. And the background here is a little bit noisy for what she's trying to do. So I would just simplify because she has a lot of detail on this bike already that's really well executed. I would probably go with a photography studio setup for this. And the reason I say this is because you have a kickstand. So she kind of tried doing a floating shot, and it kind of works for assets that like are props like guns, like certain things, but things that have some natural grounding, like a bike with a kickstand, you're probably want to show some type of a ground plane, right? And that's where you could basically do that photographer's layout and have some kind of floor plane. And since this is relatively clean, like a product shot, I think you could really go that route of just having a backdrop, having it set, and just dyeing some of this background off. I mean, but as far as the modeling detail and the texturing, this is really well done. Some things that do come to mind is the lighting. Some of the lighting, the highlights seem to be blown out. So this is usually the result of your exposure being too loud or too high. And basically, this kind of robs your incorrect lighting robs your model of details that you spend a lot of time doing. So you see, like all this is getting washed out, all this is getting washed out. So lighting is a craft that you really gotta put the time in to figure out right, and it could hide a lot of the details if you're getting underlit or underexposed and overexposed surfaces, right? Um, right here, same thing again. But you actually see that for some of these, like this works really, really well, right? So here, she doesn't really have blown out lights. And sometimes when you're doing these close-up shots, you might have to set up multiple lights, right? And this could be that she had the same light setup for every single shot, and it worked well for this. And then she rotated the model, she got in close, and now we're getting all the blown out lights here. So that's something to keep in mind. But I mean, with a couple small tweaks of the presentation, the lights, maybe ground this into a studio or having some kind of floor plane, I think this will make an amazing piece. I mean, you definitely did some great work. And the other thing that I recommend, in your work, Helen, is break down your UVs because your UVs are very clean, and break down your wireframes because they're very clean. Actually, I could show. I know Helen's work by now. I know she did the frame here, and for this shot, it actually worked quite a bit better because it's just one frame. You kind of see like similar presentation, but since this is one frame, one prop, this works visually a lot better. And this is her. So just repeat that, showing this on those other shots. And look how good this looks. I mean, you have the direction here. I mean, this is amazing work, Ellen. So if you could kind of create this and put this type of thought into every single part or every area of focus you want to show, I think that's going to be a much stronger piece. But you did great, and I believe so. Look at these UV layouts, folks. This is clean UDOM workflow here, and that's how you're able to really control your textures. Because I know a lot of people like to do auto UVs, and that works great in some instances. But when you want directional patterns, that's the difference. Like you get the utmost control, especially with straight shells. And this is what I was telling Lee in here is that like you could do kind of a brush linear, and you get those nice little pops of detail here in that direction. And that's really the difference between like an average material and like a realistic material is getting that direction. And most of the times you'll have to do a clean UV layout for that with straight shell. So you're doing amazing, Alan. We're about to hit the 5-minute mark. So I'm going to wrap this one up, and I'll let Dustin take the next one. We'll keep going. But other than that, Alan, you're doing amazing. Keep rocking it. All right, here you go.
Oh, nice interior shots. Wow. So shots like this, there's actually quite a bit to unpack, generally. So in this case, I see that Rachel's in here. So in this case today, JL has seen all these. He's pulled these up. So I'm actually kind of reacting to these somewhat on the fly, which is kind of dope because I would not have expected to land on this shot right here. Um, I've done a few of these shots, actually quite a lot of them in my time. So I used to do quite a bit of work in studio for Crate and Barrel and so on. So we were always doing interior renders. Um, and to be dead honest, like it really does look pretty dumb good. Like from especially from just a first look. There are things, if you scroll up to the first one, Jo.
Yeah, I got you.
So go down to the floor, kind of where we can see the floor and yeah, there you go. So the cabinets. So from my personal preference, because there's really not a lot in this shot to really nitpick or to really comment on as a whole. So I'm just going to kind of nitpick a few things here. So the first thing is I generally like to see floor reflection. So right now it looks like a kind of very diffuse floor with a very low, if any, reflection. Um, and I think that there could definitely be some type of reflection there that also shows like kind of the linear breaks up between the floor planks. It just really helps sell that kind of detail, especially with that window that's in the back kind of cascading through the door. You would get a lot of really nice sheen and reflection there on the floor. It would really boost the realism in it. And the other main part that I'm seeing is on the darker materials on the wall and on the cabinets is having just a slight bit of sheen. So in a lot of homes, you can do like that very matte. Like in my house, I personally use like eggshell kind of satin walls, but they always do have a little bit of sheen to those as well. So it makes a little bit of sense to put some of that in here. You can run with like a really low, kind of reflection with a good roughness or glossiness if you choose, and then have a very slight, like subtle noise in there to kind of break it up a little bit. And on the cabinets, that'll help you see those edge lines of the cabinets. So that's something that in post, if we didn't really get it in our renders, we would end up going in and kind of just in Photoshop painting these little lines right at the edge of the cabinets, to really push that light direction from whatever side we were working on. But I mean, as a whole, like this is really solid. I mean, there's not a whole lot to go in and really nitpick on. I mean, this shot, if you were doing this
You
for a
want me to
product,
you want me to sorry, you want me to scroll down a little bit more
yeah, we
because
can
she has
scroll
all
down.
right.
Yeah, I mean, looking down here, so you can kind of see the reflection on the floor a bit better in this shot. So it's kind of what I'm saying, is like that white panel in the back actually acts as like a bounce card or a light where you see that reflection on the floor. So that same type of sheen being seen in that first shot would really make those subtle details pop, kind of thus making the entire image pop. But I mean, like this looks really good. I mean, on like there's not really a ton to actually go on and critique with it. I mean, from it looks like everything's UV'd pretty well. Doesn't look like the materials are drastically off. Maybe a slightly harder light source. So with soft light, we get really soft shadows. And so sometimes when you get into corners like this, it tends to flatten everything out. And so using something like a gobo, for instance, can kind of break up some of that lighting and add a little bit more detail, kind of as if there's a window right off to the right hand side or something. But as a whole, like these are clean and they would be easily passable for some of the projects that I've done.
Cool. You got
Yeah,
30 seconds. So
cool. So we're getting into details. Go ahead.
no, 30 seconds, like 30-second mark. That's it.
Cool. So getting into detail, shots are really nice to see because we can see that, like now you can see like the real gloss that's on these materials. And so you can kind of show off some of that with a little bit harder lighting, like I was talking about before. It's more directional light and not so spread out, which gives us those nice little edge highlights. On this one, I think it really just it would really boil down to the imperfections. So on the glass that you have, I would add very subtle smudges to break up some of the reflections there. It kind of helps sell it. The noodles with like, having some subsurface, like take a look at the way that the color and the translucency of those noodles would work. And then on that glass again, it's just a little bit of surface imperfection. And I think that's really honestly what would do it for me here in this shot is just having the surface imperfections on almost every one of these materials. But that honey up there looks really dope. I can see the little bubbles and everything in that. Like that's like spot on. But I think what is it? Pomegranate, right? Is that wrong?
Yeah, it looks like that.
One of those things, whatever.
It,
But like,
it could, yeah, it could be a melon and pomegranate. So we're at
but
6 minutes. D.
yeah. So let's go ahead. We can move on.
All
Nice
right,
shots.
cool.
I like it.
Awesome breakdown. And honestly, this is what Dustin does for a living. So this is like this. You couldn't have the best guy, the best artist reviewing your work here. You want to take this one too, or you want to alternate? How you
Let's
want to do this?
we can go both sides with this. Why don't you take the you can take the modeling and UV side if there's any of that. I'll take the shading and lighting. We can break this down in 5 minutes. Let's do it.
Okay, then well, then let me. All right, start the timer then for me because I want to keep these at 5. Modeling solid, really solid. Let's see if you have a breakdown of the you do the wireframes. So this looks to be like a game asset. You have your triangles here, which is perfectly fine for what you're trying to do. So based off of this, I mean, the shape looks really good. Not sure. Actually, Erin, yeah, she's here. Perfect. I'm not sure what's if this was your original concept or this was kind of your own thing, but the execution is amazing on this. The silhouette is really good. When you're modeling, especially for video games, silhouette is super crucial because players have to distinguish from an enemy versus a friendly character. So the silhouette is good. You capture that, and Dustin threw me in a curveball here because we're splitting this up. But a lot of times the modeling and the texturing kind of goes together because as a modeler, some things are going to be kind of a texture process, whether you build out your base in Maya or Blender, and then you add those tertiary details via a sculpt or in Substance Painter, right? And this is what I talk about in my videos in my Substance Painter course is it's called the tertiary detail execution. And a lot of these details, especially when you're a beginner modeler, you tend to model all this in the geometry, like things like panel lines, and it could be a nightmare. And it looks like you opted to do this the right way by, if we look here, you have like that panel line, but that's all done through texture work. So kudos to you to figuring out that getting your primary and secondary in your block out in your initial shapes, and then actually dictating some of this, which if you didn't use Substance, I'm assuming you use Substance Painter to create these panel lines, which is kind of my preferred method. All things being considered, just add panel lines in those tertiary details. So great job on the modeling, the execution. Can't really see your UV layouts on this breakdown, but everything looks to be on point. So I'll let Dustin do the second half of this.
Yeah, for sure. If you wanna, you can go up to the to the renders. I
Yeah.
mean, overall, like it's solid. Like I would low key, like I would love to take something like this and just render it for kicks, just to see what else I would do with it. But the biggest thing I think that when I look at this, there's a lot of surface breakup and detail that's already there. Um, and it's very soft. So, something like this, I would kind of take it into maybe like that darker source of the realm of the universe, and add some like a lot of drama to it. So I would have, where you have the rust and certain breakups already, I might go in and add just another level, like layer of detail, that is, in the more like blue gray paints, just something underneath that's a little bit less subtle because you can see that there's some of it there. I actually have a tutorial on CG Hack's YouTube channel about using the grunge maps and stuff. It's in Cinema 4D and Redshift, but you would kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about with adding those breakups. But this is solid. Being a photographer, like I'm kind of looking at like that camera lens kind of eye there. Um, the only thing that I would like to see there is a little bit more of a breakup between the gray values that you have. So when you look inside of a camera lens, like it's usually dark, you know, kind of just like it's really just black essentially. It's all black plastic and stuff going in. So I would really kind of force that to give depth as you get further back into the iris there. Um, but I mean, so far it's, you know, it's just very small details and nitpicking at this point. So yeah, it's pretty solid.
Awesome. All right, just take the next one, Dustin. And
Sure.
we'll just go one at a time here. I'll let you do
Cool.
the entire one. So we're done with that. Go ahead, go for it, and I'll keep the timer.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like a lot of these today I'm just gonna be nitpicking. So, you know, these like taking a look at it, like there's a lot that's going on in the model here that's not, you know, at like a large scale. I guess, you know, like it's generally maybe like two or three big forms that are actually on the model, and you have a bunch of the little panels and things like that that are done. I was actually just going to bring up weathering and stuff like that, but it looks like it's already done here. So there's really not, you know, a whole lot in this space that I would really look to do. um it's really solid. I think maybe having some of those some smaller breakups. One thing that I do tend to see a lot in, you know, kind of portfolios across the board, whether it's Photoshop compositing that I do or it's more on the 3D side here, is, you know, we tend to use like really big textures to do things. And sometimes the smaller the detail, the smaller the texture display, like can really work the best because you can build up like three levels of detail. And that's kind of generally what I like to put into, you know, my realistic work. So when students ask me, they're like, hey, how do I make it look realistic? It's like three deets, man. Like you have to add three levels of detail. So here you have, you know, the bigger breakup that's kind of across the whole there. And then the rest of it is fairly uniform. You have some edge wear, you know, and things like that going in, but on those larger panels, you don't really have like uh the smaller bits of grunge and grime that would just kind of be built up over time. Um, but that again, that's like heavy nitpicking. So overall, it's really good work.
You're at you can keep going. You got
Yeah.
3 minutes left.
You want to go down? Scroll down through the
Uh
rest of them?
oh, my bad. Yeah, I forget you don't.
Yeah, I
I
don't have
forgot
control over that side.
yeah,
It's your computer,
you
man.
know. Yeah, it is. Huh? All right. Let me know where you want me to stop.
Yeah, you can stop in the back. So I wow. This is like this is it's pretty cool seeing it from this way. It's a different angle. So if you guys look me up, you'll see the type of style, you know, the photography that I like to do, and I like to use like very dramatic lighting most of the time. You know, so for me, like this is essentially like that beauty, like iconic, dramatic shot that I would tend to look for when I'm doing my portfolio work. Um, I mean, and if you can look at my website, dustinvalkema.com, and just a couple renders that I have there, and they're all dramatic, pretty much like this, regardless of what it is. So, you know, the angle of the shot, the angle of the lighting, um, you know, that's all working out really well. You know, I think pretty much, you know, through the details that you have going on as far as like the propulsion system, like they all work well. I would maybe just tone them down a little bit, just to allow them to kind of be there but not like the main focus of the shot. But again, that's very nitpicky. If I were to see like an animated, you know, ship like this moving through a shot, and as long as those lights made sense, you know, and the brightness of everything, I wouldn't even question it.
Um, you good, or you want me to keep scrolling down? He has a couple more shots.
Yeah, I'm good. I feel like those two shots pretty much held like a good front and back. Like this is all it's a solid piece.
All right, I second that. Yep,
Yeah.
amazing work. So great job, and appreciate you coming by and getting your work review, Chris. The next one is This is a animation, I believe. Well, she has a couple breakdowns here. I could, I guess, take this one. Run the time for me, D. This is obviously character work. The animation's not my. I usually tell people rigging and animation. I stay in my lane, so I'm not going to go through this. This is actually just a turntable, so that's good. But I'm going to just focus on the stills here. I think you have a good understanding. A good understanding of anatomy would definitely help here. I probably should get in the habit of asking. And Akita, are you here? Type it in the chat because I'm not going to review this one. And Keita, are you here? All right, I'm gonna give you about 5 more seconds here. If you don't reply, if this is not your portfolio, anybody here, I'll go ahead and keep moving. So, all right, guess they didn't show. It's all good. Life happens. So let's go ahead and nope, not here. That actually saved 5 minutes. Perfect. All right, Mohammed, are you here? I
I
really
think
want you to
Muhammad's
be here
here.
because I really want him to be here because this is actually a pretty dope piece. Mohammed, are you here? Is your artwork perfect? All right. So Mohammed looks to be a prop artist or do props. This is very well done, very well presented. You got time on, Dustin? Keep me on track. Actually, I'll do
Yeah,
this.
you're good.
All right, perfect, cool. So the old school vintage VCR looks like these models are done a lot, and they actually, if you're under 30 years old here, VCR was this mythical device before streaming. The only way that you could actually watch movies is pop a cassette in here and watch a movie. So
I love how you said that so gracefully, other than like we're old. Like it's dope.
because people are like, what the hell is that? What kind of relic is that? Let's go ahead and look at these. But yeah, obviously you did a great job on this. Looks like you used marmoset substance and blender. Yeah, this is great. I'm kind of on Dustin on this one. Anything that I'll say on a piece like this is definitely nitpicking. This is obviously a game workflow where you didn't care about quads, but you spent. This is something that I talked about in an earlier piece. You definitely spent polygons to get that to get those edges rounded, right? So whether using sub D for a VFX workflow or you're using kind of a low poly real-time rendering approach where you don't care about tries. The main thing is that you still want to have that believability for your asset, and for especially for closer hero assets, you definitely want to spend time because the biggest thing that gives CG away is not having beveled edges, having faceting on your edges, and usually, like Dustin talked about, perfect surfaces all the time, right? Unless it's a brand new product, you're going to have smudges. You're going to have imperfections, right? And you have imperfections here. I could tell you have a roughness map. I can't look at your maps, but I know that the way that controller, that remote is spinning, and even these surfaces, they're not perfect. You can see, and all that is roughness, and that's one of the key takeaways for texturing. Is probably one of the most important maps you could ever learn and master to get realism is roughness maps because they break up those perfect surfaces. And it looks like you even did it here. Kudos on that floor plane. So you really have a good grasp of just not only modeling UVs and texturing. The other thing that I really want to commend you on is that you got the right amount of wear. A typical sign of a beginner texture artist is that they go into substance, they throw in a smart mask or pre-made material, and they don't pay attention to where and how objects wear right over time. And you just have that subtleness. It's not overpowering. I could tell that you're probably using some kind of AO to get a little bit of dirt here in the cavities where dust and grime would naturally collect, and here as well in these little recessed areas. So It's an amazing piece, great presentation. I honestly can't say anything bad about it. The only thing that maybe I would say is break down your UVs to see how efficient you are, especially for a game workflow. Packing those UVs would be, it's a good tale of optimization. But other than that, brother, I think you killed it, and I think you're definitely on the right track. So I'm going to give you a round of applause for this one. I'm very, very impressed.
Yeah, super nostalgic, man. Like I'm like, man, I don't know when the last time I used a VCR was. I actually want to give him some homework on this one. Like
Go
I
for
want
it.
to I want to see this. I want to see this finished. Like not just this prop and piece, but like I want the VHS tape halfway in there with like the TV screen and everything kind of set up like my grandma's old little TV set. You could do that and send it back. I gotta see it, man. That's the homework. Great work.
Yeah, great work. Great work. You knocked it out the park. All right, Dustin, I'm going to give you the next one. So we'll close this one up, full screen it up, slide the timer on. And first of all, let's ask if you're here. Ivan, are you here? You here with us? Yeah, we got to get into having the basket. I'm just like running and gunning here. All right, so I'm gonna give you a couple more seconds, Ivan. If you're not here, I'm just gonna move on to somebody that is. All right, so I guess Ivan didn't make it. All good, cool. All right, go for it, Dustin.
Oh man. See,
Oh,
this is
actually, yeah, I should ask. Shavesh, are you here? I'm like breaking my rules over and over. Shavesh, are you here? You got 10 seconds. All right, perfect. He came. He's here.
nice.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Thank you
So
for showing up for that. Oh man. So dang man. It's a solid. See, so we're like getting into the nostalgic stuff. So like there's a lot of stuff going good with this, and honestly, kind of in the same train of thought that we're kind of going on with here, is it's going to be a bit more nitpicky than not. Um, on this first main shot, the way that I look at this and I see it initially, like it stands out, maybe not as necessarily photo real, but it's something that would kind of hit me, and part of that's just because I hate saying it, but I guess I'm old and like I was in that, that Pokemon era, like hardcore. um but as a whole, like when you look at like the edge where, that's happening on the pokeballs, um and even on the other assets. So like you have the nice red paint with the metal wear on the edges. I would look to maybe break up the actual red surface a little bit more. So when you think about, how much, time and wear goes into those edges to actually get them all broken apart that way, um like I would expect to see, like, deeper tones of dirt and kind of grime that's on that red surface, because the red as a whole, like I can see little surface imperfections on it, but that red paint looks just a little bit too perfect, compared to the edges that it has. Now there is a time and a place for that, and it really depends on whether you're going for like hyper photorealism, or if you're just showing off those details, both of which work. So, overall, like it's really solid. On the buttons, in particular, because it's so worn down, like I would almost look to have like, as nasty as it is, it's like either the oil buildup or like the wear away from like fingers kind of rubbing that stuff over time, because there's so much extra wear and tear on the rest of it. And so, from a nitpicking standpoint, like those are some of the areas that I see could use a little bit of work. Having a bit more sheen on the actual cards themselves would be huge. So if you just had like a bit more reflection that kind of fell off on those as they, as they got closer to camera and so on, it would look really good. Maybe also like a little bit of like metal foil and things that you would see in a lot of these cards. Um, so yeah, I can see that you said you added some fingerprints on the buttons. Um, yeah, and they may not, JL, you want to move down. Maybe we can see some of them on like more detail shots. And so, okay, so looking at it, I don't as much see, the fingerprints. And there are reasons for that. What I'm talking about in the breakup is not so much the just the surface imperfection as far as like a roughness map. I'm talking a little bit more of the diffuse. So when I'm talking in like my rule of thirds, if you will, when I'm building material and the levels of detail that I'm going into, I look to break up the surface of the diffuse or the albedo. I look to break up the surface of the normal and roughness. Um, and then I like to break up the surface of things like sheen and, depending on, whether it has sheen or not. I like to go into that and actually break up some of those. So, in this case, I would definitely look to get into, the albedo or that diffuse side and really break up the color and the pigment detail there. So, I mean, overall though, man, this is good. Like you could realistically probably just copy the map that you used for the roughness or breaking up, with the fingerprints on the buttons. You could just multiply that over the diffuse, and kind of play around with the levels that you have there. But it's super solid overall.
Perfect, man. You did great on timing. Yeah, I second that. And overall, great piece. All right, let's keep it going here. Appreciate everybody showing up, and most of you guys are here, which is awesome. So I'm gonna X out of this, X out of this as well, and I think I could take this one. So first of all, Andres, are you here in? Are you joining us today? Are you here in the chat? You got 10 seconds, Andres. Are you here with us? Is this your work? All right, perfect. Andres showed up. Awesome. So let me start the timer here. Put this on full screen. Let's get it. All right. So you did this work here, and this is actually a bike. I recognize this bike. This is from Elemensa. So shout out to Elemensa, another awesome 3D artist in the community. He's been holding it down with my clean workflow, clean 3D modeling. So definitely check out his work, Elemensa. But yeah, this is from a tutorial. But honestly, the execution on this is awesome. I think you did a great job. Very clean renders. You have that ground plane. This is something I was telling Helen. Anytime that you have an object and it kind of dictates a ground plane, it makes sense to do it because it grounds it in reality. And you have kind of these light streaks here, further indicating that this is a real world object, kind of a light source. So this is a great job. And again, like shadows, really ground your things in reality and into a floor plan. And I like how you faded this because the great thing about a great artist, right, is that they find that balance of grounding something, their portfolio pieces, but letting what they want to show off be the main thing, the main focus, right? So you struck the balance of just having that ground plane, but not having a whole city, super in focus. And that's the difference between work that really just captures attention and allows the viewer to focus on detail versus just building a scene that's cluttered and the viewer's eye doesn't know where to go. And I think with this piece, you did a great job at basically directing the viewer on what the focus is. I think this shot here, maybe it looks. I think I would have faded this or shown a little bit more ground plane. This looks a little bit off to the natural eye here, so I would have maybe included this a little bit more. Like here, you see how much more depth That's just a little nitpicky, as Dustin would say. Again, great close up here. The only thing I would watch out for this shot, I'm not sure how you actually lit this, whether it was one scene, one light, and you just kind of zoomed in, or you individually lit each of these shots particularly. But right here, you're getting quite a bit of blown out and blown out highlights. This is, if you use what you did, most of this could be remedied by just bringing down the exposure on those lights, right? So you want to think about that. Also, another thing that can help really art direct your lighting is light linking, right? So maybe this harsh highlight was something that you wanted to put something here. So you could always take this chain off from, say an area light and not have it be influenced. So, and Blender now actually has light linking too, which
Can
is
I add
pretty
just a
awesome.
little bit?
Go for it.
Just a little bit. So JL is definitely right as far as the processes that you could go to correct that. From a shader standpoint, I would just add more imperfection if there is any here. Currently, it doesn't quite look like it from this angle, but I would add it to those chains and the rotor, things like that, because what that's going to do is it's going to break up a lot of that light in the reflection, kind of diffuse it in certain areas, make it pop. And ultimately you can get away with it being that bright, but what you need to do is visually break it up. So where you have the wear and tear, you can see that you have imperfection on the tire. Just carry that over to some of these like more worn pieces that would be on the bike. But yeah, I mean, overall, like again, it's more nitpicking.
Yeah, it looks like he got around to doing some of the texture works, like the tires. But yeah, overall, this is great. I mean, this is like an amazing piece. You did some variants here. You gave some different angles. Again, same thing here, just a little bit of the blown out. And I agree with Dustin. You could have you already started doing it. Maybe you just didn't get around to just UVing these lengths or doing a procedural shader. But adding a little bit of imperfection could have definitely went a little bit further. Yeah, but overall, this is like an amazing piece, and I really like the breakdowns. The modeling super clean, super clean. I could tell you got a good topology. Yeah, this is amazing work. Clean sub D workflow. Always love that. Seeing the wires here. Oh, if you're displaying the wires, just a little caveat is maybe just show a little bit more contrast. You usually if you do like an AO pass, because this doesn't look like an AO. So usually like an AO with a slight AO with like a darker wireframe really pops. I can still see the wireframe, but you did such an amazing job. I probably would have pushed the contrast on this to just show off your work. But yeah, amazing work. Keep it up and just add, just keep at it with all these, I guess, points that me and Dustin highlighted. Your next piece will be even stronger than this one. So great work. All right, Dustin, I'll let you take the next one here if they're here. So we got Will. Will, you in the house? I gotta put my disclaimer there. Took me a while to figure out these banners, so I'm gonna punish you guys by an endless amount of banners here for a little bit. But okay, so Will doesn't seem to be here. Okay, all good. So we'll move on to the next one. Justice, you here? Justice, are you in the house? That's an epic name, Justice. I wish I had that name, Justice. JL Justice League kind of has a good ring to it, but definitely an uh, amazing name. Justice, you here? Give you about 5 more seconds. If not, we'll keep rolling. All right, Justice looks like he couldn't make it. Last name Potter. I don't want to butcher your first name, so I'm gonna go with what I know. Potter, are you here? You got 10 seconds, brother. We should bring like a shot clock here. 10-second
Right.
shot clock. Mr. Potter, you here for your review?
It's the final countdown.
Yeah, bust out the old school song. Cool. So Mr. Potter didn't look like he made it either. All right. Uh, Mr. James Rowe, you in the house? A lot of no shows on this little street. I'm looking on time. All right, cool, perfect. All right, take it away, Dustin.
Death row, I like it. All right. Let's before I go too heavy into this one, let's scroll down through some of the images so we can kind of see what it looks like.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
You want to check
overall,
this out? Oh, this is
yeah,
the
yeah.
model.
That's the model. Oh, that's nice. All right. It's good. It's weird because I'm actually trying to follow your mouse as if it's mine. Yeah, I mean it's pretty solid, man. Like looking at the details overall, I think so far on the metal surfaces that you have, um, I had made a comment a little bit earlier about using like big textures. And usually when you use big textures, you get big details. So it's things like, the normal map that's on those. It generally will look good from afar, but far from good when you get close. And so the hard part about that is trying to find a balance in between. So when you're working on a model like this, doing the textures, building up the materials, what I tend to like to do is kind of view it close and then have a secondary camera that's backed off it a ways so that I can flip between both of those cameras and whatever render engine you're using. It's the same in Photoshop. I use what's called a dual view when I'm doing composites, and so I have one that's kind of zoomed into my subject, one that's pulled back quite a ways. Because there's a lot of detail sometimes that you don't have to put in because you won't see it from afar. But then, the reverse is of course true when you're going in close. So on this one, if we zoom in a little bit close, because we can actually see the model here, zoom into some of the metals down towards the bottom. So when you're looking here, you can see all of those bigger details. And I think that there is enough detail in the model, and the model itself looks good enough that you can get in close. So what I would generally do is kind of tone back on that normal map. I would assume it's a normal map. Um, I would use that at maybe 25% of where it's currently at and just let those imperfections be subtle because you
Oops,
won't need to see them from far away.
took me to the sketch fab. I was trying to do something else, but there we go. My bad.
You're good. So go up to the final composition there, the one in scene. I think you're
Yeah.
gonna have to scroll on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at it from from this stance here, um, generally speaking, there's a couple things. So I'm not really gonna nitpick the railroad too hard, because I feel overall that's pretty decent. I would make whatever the larger posts. Um, I would make the larger posts, kind of darker, so they're a little bit more worn and beaten down. Um, as far as the grass and the weeds, they kind of look so sparse, but the ground is very light. So kind of in this sense, what I would look, I would kind of think to see this in would be a bit more of like maybe like farmland. And so I would probably have like a darker undertone and then have some actual physical rocks that are scattered on top there instead of trying to do that through like the textures on the ground. Because you will have to push the displacement for that quite hard if you want that to show. And so with the foliage that we have in here, we have, you know, all the little plants in the middle. They're so sparse that, you know, they kind of look thicker as they're going on, because that's kind of getting out of, you know, looking down out of that general perspective field of view. And then when you're looking up close, it's kind of like looking at my hair, man. Like, it looks good from afar, but like, you don't want to look at it up close. And that's kind of how these are. So I'd add a little bit more smaller pieces of foliage in there and get that broken down. Um, or just remove some of that and add dirt and rocks, because that would also make a lot of sense. As far as the lighting, I think that, you know, this is generally pretty good, but it looks like a lot of the lighting is kind of coming flat from the side. And what that does is it flattens out all of the details that you have going on in the shot. So for me, what I like to do is I like to raise that up quite a bit and then move it off that camera frame. Um, and probably see quite a bit of that, you know, coming more towards like the far side, so the shadows are cascading back. And that will kind of help lead the eye through the rest of the shot. So that's pretty much all I got for this, man. I mean, as far as the modeling and everything, it looks pretty solid. Like, you just got to nitpick details on this one too.
Awesome. All right, that's the 5 minute mark. Awesome insights by Dustin. Go ahead and take the next one here. You could jump on the chat and we'll go ahead and reset this. Aza, are you with us? All right, 10-second countdown, Aza. If you're here, let us know so we could cover your work. It's an awesome piece, actually.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Ah,
All right,
yes.
cool. So clock's on, full screen. Let's do this.
All right. So this one's me, or this one's you?
I think you're dying to take this one. I said me, but you can take it if you want.
Oh, I'm just saying, I like I mean, I could do this all day with some of these shots, man. We'll go through. Um I mean, where to really start, right? So I don't let's go down to the wireframe and check that out first and see if this is, you know, if there's any issues along those lines.
Nah, this looks pretty clean.
It's solid. That's kind of what I thought, and you can kind of tell by looking at the rest of the piece. Um, there's not a whole lot of like wasted detail in geometry anywhere that I'm seeing. You know, there's such intricate details in some of these. Sweet. All right, let's go back up to the main shot then. All right. So when you're lighting metal, like this is gonna be so nitpicky, and I'm sorry because I really have to just like nitpick a lot of these actually. So when you're shooting metal, I like to have a small key light. So currently, it looks like you have a small key light that's pretty much facing right at the front of the model. Um, Personally, that's not as much my style. What I like to work with is having a key light that's kind of offset, and you can sort of see that towards, you know, towards the front of your model, that you've got a light over there. But I would maybe make that light a little bit bigger so that it also cascades and falls off to the side, and then you can have a fill light that kind of like you have, it looks like on the abdomen there. You got a light over there that's kind of filling in some details. I'd be very curious to see what the lighting setup looks like for this. um, but from a general stance, there's a couple things that I would maybe go to adjust on this, and that's primarily with the rim lights. So I would like to see like a nice silhouetted edge all the way around the model. And so what I would do is either use like two in photography what we call strip lights, and they're like long rectangular lights that you can place back behind there, and I would actually move them in quite a bit closer to your model and then tone down the intensity so they're not so bright and like blowing out all of the detail there. But what those will do is create a really nice silhouette all the way across all of the metallic surfaces. And then when it will also illuminate the wings, kind of from underneath to really show some of the translucency and the detail you have in the glass there. Um, yeah, man, this is it's actually almost difficult to really go in and critique it. From a photography standpoint, like I can talk about what my style would be, but overall presentation, like this really isn't bad. Um, when I'm
You
looking
want to
at
check out other shots, or you good
I
on
mean,
this?
we can. I think this one shows off most of the stuff pretty good.
Okay.
Um, the edge wear on this one is pretty solid. Like it's small details, and I think the only variation that I would like to see in this is having a couple like scratches that are up and across, kind of like really pushing their way across parts of the model to just bring more of like a cohesive like these are all not necessarily all plates that were just put on, but they're like plates that have been there for a while. So if I were to take a nail and kind of just like run it across, your model, you get a few scratches in there that kind of run across the various plates. But those are just tiny details. Overall, it's really good work. Like there's not really a whole lot that I would go into critiquing about this normally. So really solid. Um, you want to go down to the presentation of some of the passes.
Yeah. Justin, are we good on audio on your end? Just I'm getting some comments in the chat about audio, but I thought we were good. You sound fine to me. I'm good on the mic check.
Yeah, you sound good to me. Is it your
Yeah,
mic or is it my mic? That
I'm
sounds
not
weird.
sure. I'm just getting a couple like random comments about Mike. Type in a one if you guys can hear this good overall. Put a one in the chat. Yeah, sounds fine. All right, cool. Yeah, I just hit us, so there we are. We didn't go nowhere. I'm just messing around with the layouts. Cool.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. Again, overall, like it's super solid. You can see that there's little lights and stuff inside, like like inside, like the gem. What is that jade that's on there? Either
Yeah,
way, like it looks really good. Like I might actually personally boost up that light a little bit, or you can do it in Photoshop. Add a little bit of glow. Uh, I will say, kind of a pro tip. Um, there's a plugin for Photoshop called Oniric by Composite Nation that is like my bread and butter go to for like all of the glows. Take a look at it for something like this where you've got glows inside of assets because it's
cool, cool.
solid. Like I want to see this thing animated and actually like working its way through a shot. Like it's so solid.
That's awesome feedback. Great work, Ozza. And yeah, but that's the 5 minutes is up. But I think Dustin honestly covered everything in exquisite detail. So amazing work, and we're super impressed with this. Go ahead and get out of this one. I'll take this one.
Cool.
So first of all, Alan, you with us today? Alan, are you here? Awesome, awesome. Okay, so let's beam me up, Scotty. The old Star Trek joke, but um, I think overall this is solid, clean presentation of the Enterprise. Let's see how many. I'm just kind of doing a quick scrub here of what you got. So this is a reference sheet. This is vital to 3D modelers and also texture artists. So he has the blueprints, and anytime you're doing work like this where you're trying to create a representation of something very iconic, or really it doesn't have to be iconic, but if you want to nail down what you're basically going after, you want to get that very, very close likeness. These reference sheets, most likely, he used PureRef. PureRef is a free software that does this very, very quickly, but you could do it in Photoshop as well. So kudos on having these breakdowns of materials and also the shape. Here's some of the modeling. You introduced some of the wireframes. overall, the modeling looks good. Not sure if this was, looks like it was a sub D model. You got pretty clean topology for the most part. Looks like you have some good edge flow there, kind of incorporating these pieces. So I really can't nitpick at the modeling. I think the modeling is pretty solid for what you're trying to do. Good breakdowns here. So I think let's just look at the presentation here of some of these shots. Let's scrub up here. You have a video. So the video is actually very, very well done. I like that. And these renders are great. You have some of that tertiary detail via Substance Painter. And, this shape is relatively simple, but just adding kind of that tertiary breakup to these big shapes is really going to make something look interesting. So you don't always have to model something super detailed with your model. You can get a lot of, I would say, easier detail and breakup and a better presentation and better model aesthetically by just breaking up things with Substance Painter by adding tertiary details. I mean, this is like a big area, but these big areas, they're important to actually break up, right? If you didn't have those tertiary details, any of this breakup, and this was like a big shape with no decals, none of this paneling work, then that would start to fall flat. So, he did a great job just breaking down this paneling. Now, I'm not, I would probably break up the roughness a little bit more. I know if this has been going through space endlessly for 30 seasons, maybe this would kind of have a little bit of roughness, a little bit of breakup, even though it looks like it's in the diffuse. And obviously, I can't see your maps, but maybe adding some subtle height differences between this panel work, adding a little bit of AO would maybe just help this break this up a little bit. I know we're pretty far out, so I wouldn't go overboard, but just a little bit more breakup on this paneling, I think would help basically sell this great model overall. Let's yeah, it looks like it opens it up a new tab. Let's see. Okay, so presentation wise, this is kind of like I guess, pet peeve of mine. Obviously, this is set in space, and there is kind of a caveat, but sometimes when I'm presenting, I don't, and I want to just purely show off the model. And this is more, you do have some better shots breaking down the model, but something I look at is my information getting lost in the background, right? You spend all this time modeling, and this is just like a general portfolio tip for everybody out there. But if you have like dark shadows and a dark background, that tends to lose a lot of your shapes, right? In a studio setup, you would probably maybe add a rim light. Obviously, you're trying to ground this in reality, so there's that caveat. But as a general rule of thumb, I like to have my silhouette and my main shapes not get lost in the background, right? And for this, I'll give you a little bit more leeway because, this is not going to be planted in New York City, right? This is probably one of the few backgrounds you got the option for. But that's just something to keep in mind is when you are presenting things, your shapes and the color of your background, make sure they don't blend in, right? And like I said, for this, I think you probably made the right choice, but generally, and I tell you that because you do have other shots where it kind of breaks down the model. But maybe consider even doing like a presented shot in space, and then maybe having another shot where you really focus in on the details, capturing silhouette, and adding more art directed light. But overall, Alan, I think you're definitely on the right track, and I think you did amazing work. Just to kind of wrap things up, I would probably just push the textures a little bit more, seeing that this shape or this model really has really big areas where not a lot is happening. And like I said, you started doing that, but I would love to see some more details popped in via, normal maps and also roughness. So great work overall.
Sweet.
Cool.
Good stuff.
That's good stuff. Yep. All right, Eric, you with us? You want to take this next one, Dustin?
Sure.
Eric, you with us? All right, cool. So he's here. Let's put this in full screen, and I'll set the timer up. And it's all yours, Dustin.
Yeah, so let's click in. Can we click into the images at all?
Yeah, which one do you want to go? Anyone?
Just start, yeah, just kind of start there and sort of work your way around.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So in the couple years of time that I spent as a ZBrush artist, thinking I was going to get into character design, that was probably one of the quickest pivots that I've actually made in my career. Um, I did quite a bit of explorations and stuff like this, and generally down it, realistically, like the only feedback that I would really have to give on this um, is really based around anatomy. So in a portfolio piece like this, what I would look to do is study anatomy and the way that both muscle and fat, like if it weren't obscene for a show, like I would take my shirt off and you see how the fat rolls, right? Like the way fat hangs and kind of like holds and folds over muscle and the bones and all of that stuff is a little bit different. So when I look at this, there's a couple things that kind of stand out, like primarily with the stomach, and it's primarily in like the larger forms. So what I do like is that you have some of the details and breakups, whether it's scarring around the model and stuff like that. But when you look at the silhouette and the way that the forms kind of lay and how they sit, um it kind of throws the brain off a little bit of not being as believable. And so for me, what I'm looking at is the way that maybe like the love handles and that belly would kind of just fall down, you know, like onto the undergarments, and it would sort of just be hanging over versus just kind of poking out, from the top of it, if you will. Because it generally speaking, it's gonna just kind of fall and flow that way. So it really boils down to much more of an anatomy base. The way that I like to work with this stuff when I'm in ZBrush, which honestly isn't too often these days, is I work on a couple different levels of detail. So first it's that really low poly, kind of blocking everything out and getting it going before I start adding details and things like that. So like the skin details, like the little fold that you have around like the belly button was dope. So like there's a lot of good stuff in here, but what I'm personally missing is kind of like that maybe first or even second level of subdivision where you're still blocking out that base mesh and that armature to really sculpt the rest of that detail on. Because when you work too high poly too quickly, it gets very chunky. And it's easy for the proportions of like belly fat to muscle, and then also like the arms and limbs and certain things like that. If that base mesh isn't solid, that anatomy is going to be off. So for kind of like a troll character, something like this, that I would imagine being massive. Personally, like they still may have a belly like that and look kind of off, but I would expect the shoulders to be a little bit more, overarching, larger, because the hands are so big. The forearms are going to be there, extended out, and there's just a few different levels, of anatomical reference that you could look at with something like this, and your brain starts to throw it off. Um, so that's really it. I mean, a lot of the detail sculpting that you did looks pretty good. I just think that was a little bit premature, um, prior to following, strictly following reference on the first and second subdivision.
Cool. Awesome breakdown. Dustin, what I'll do is when I'm timing, it's like 30 seconds, like about 4:30 mark, I'll throw out the banner. So you could just look down and that's like your
Cool.
30-second window. But awesome breakdown from Dustin. So I'll take the next one. Dustin, just take the chat over there. And
Sure.
Sanjar, are you with us today? Sanjar, are you with us? You got 10 seconds, brother. Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to just give it an overall scrub, see what you have. And then I like to look at breakdowns as well, which you do. You have that giving me kind of an overall sense of what's driving. Because sometimes if we're just looking, we don't know what's being done through modeling, through subdivision. This looks like you went for a sub-D model, and it looks like some of this, I think you could actually save some edge loops here. It looks pretty dense. So some of this could, when you're doing sub-D modeling, you're basically letting you're reinforcing all your edges. But the beauty about sub-D modeling is that you're able to work off the lower cage, right? And even though you don't have a stringent poly count like you do in like a real-time rendering scenario, you still want to think about optimization. And I could tell here that, a lot of these straights here, that probably could have been optimized. I know you were trying to keep the quadding relatively even, but here I think it's around the handles. I think you have a better sense. So, and remember, details dictate density. So here, this is a much larger area of detail, or more intricate details. So the topology was probably needed to be a little bit denser. But here, for this shape, maybe some of this could be reduced, right? So that was just a little nitpicking on the edge flow. But overall, your model looks great. I like how you have breakup here in your textures. You have decals. So overall, the presentation of the actual model is solid. You have your AO pass. AO passes are critical. Even though they're kind of a cheat to real life, they really help push down. They give you soft shadow contacts. Soft. I think I said that right. But they give you those soft shadows and really accentuate the darker recess areas, right? The key to getting AOs right is not having them, especially if you're overlaying in Photoshop, is to not actually have it muddy up your image. And I think you have the right AO balance here. So, but sometimes you can go a little bit too dark with them and introduce too many grays and start to muddy up your renders. The actual renders are good. I think the background, this goes back to what the same exact thing that I was talking about, the Enterprise, is when you have pure black and pure white backgrounds, pure white's going to actually have your highlights blend in, and pure black is going to have your shadows blended, right? So I like my backgrounds more of a mid-tone grayish, that way, and with a slight hint, but you really want to think about contrast. So here, as I'm looking at this, even though the model is very, very well done, I'd probably just switch out this background versus like a pure white. And even if you look a lot of product design renders, you'll notice that even though it's a lighter background, they usually go for this like light gray, and sometimes they'll even introduce slight color variations just to make things pop a little bit more, right? And that's something that I would suggest, because if I'm squinting at this, some of these highlights here are actually getting lost. And if you have any nice rim lighting to this, it's going to get lost in this pure white background. So if we zoom in here, you see that we're kind of going towards the white areas, and I can't really zoom in more, but if you squint, you're starting to lose this right here. And that's a shame, because you did a great job with the texturing. So just throwing just a more neutral background will make this thing pop a lot. And remember, your job in a portfolio is to display your modeling work. A lot of people like to do over dramatic backgrounds and lighting, but at the end of the day, if you're a modeler, if you're a texture artist, your main focus should be to display your work, and then maybe have secondary images. If you want to get a little bit more dramatic, throw those towards the bottom. But your main goal is to always look and think, am I, all this time that I spent modeling, texturing, can the viewer see this, right? And is my skill sets of modeling, UVing, and texturing really coming through? Okay. So if you're going for dramatic lighting, that's something. Obviously, this is not the case because it's a pretty neutral lighting. And you did a great job. I mean, like, this is, if you're really looking at the nuances of lighting, look for these highlights. So he has this nice clean highlight going down, really accentuating the shapes, right? Because even with 2D, what makes I don't think I'm at 10 minutes. How are we looking on time, Dustin?
3:30.
Perfect. What really makes your shapes pop is shadows and highlights. Okay. And if you're going away from that, then things are going to read flat. And like I said, he has some great highlights here, some great shadows, some great texture work, and overall modeling. But I think just that background is kind of doing a disservice to the overall solid work of this piece. So let's see other angles. And I'm really digging this 3/4 here, this perspective. But overall, this is phenomenal. I really like what you did with this piece. You even added, it looks like a little cover to maybe some tape. Looks like some tape. And these are the things that tell a story on a model, right? That goes from average to better when you can tell a story. Now, some of these things, like these smudges, still your roughness looks kind of flat. Everything looks like a similar sheen, so I would definitely push out the roughness. If you're using substance, you want to look at that roughness channel, and maybe everything is either one tone or a very similar shade. So when you push the contrast on that roughness, you're going to get that reaction basically hit a little different. If you don't know what a roughness map is, the rougher the value, the more matte. And then, if we're looking at an old stone or something with scratches, right, it's going to have a rougher value. It's going to be towards white. A mirror surface is going to be a perfectly occluded, right? So zero roughness, it's going to be a pristine surface. And usually for things that have been worn, touched, scratched up, you want to have that nice contrast. But overall, you killed this, and I think overall it's a very simple fix. Just add a little bit of roughness, change this up to a more neutral background, and I think this would pop a lot more with relatively little work. So great job on this, Dustin. I'll go ahead and let you take the next one. So Luke, is Luke in the house? Cool. Luke's here, so let's do it. It's all yours, Dustin.
Yeah, let's scroll through them all.
That's it.
Yeah. Let's head back up top. All right, so there's quite a bit to unpack on this one, and it's not necessarily in the details. So this is going to be a little bit more of a harsh critique than it is, I guess, kind of skating around, because I want you to grow as fast as possible with some of this work. So right now, and I'm not sure exactly what the, like what the use for this is. Maybe you could throw it in the chat, like if this is something that's, you're wanting to look more photorealistic, or if it's supposed to be a bit more like kind of like a simple game asset. like let me know in the chat, because then I can kind of adjust fire on how I'm how I'm critiquing. So first things first is right now everything kind of looks like clay. And the hard part about that is that there's really not a whole lot to present. Um, in the case of detail and looking into the maps and all of that. This was simply a stylized scene I created around the book. Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense. What I would still look to do though in this case, even though it's being stylized, is work with textures that still mimic reality. Um, because the detail in them can add a lot to a space like this. So what I mean by that is diving in and I can see that there are little bits of like wood grain and stuff on the desk. What I would do is actually use, if it's a stylized, I would use something like a toon shader to really push the cracks and crevices of the wood grain to actually give it a wood type of look instead of being so subdued. Because when you look at the book, you can see that the book has breakup and you can see all the difference in pages. um as you get into that, I'm looking at the rest of the scene and kind of looking for, even like that same level of detail. So where JL's talking a lot about the roughness and things like that, this for me is quite a bit more lying in the diffuse texture. So you would start off with the diffuse, and then you could even break up that diffuse map to use that as a roughness map and so on if you didn't want to go into substance and create a whole, pipeline process for the whole scene. You could still get some really nice breakups and look to that. So that's kind of on some of the detail side, and it's not just the table, but that kind of flows into a lot of it. um let's see here, guy. Yeah, I spent way more time on the book, but I wanted a small clean. Okay, so as you get into this, right, that's one level of detail. The other level of detail that I would look at first is having a shadow catcher on the floor, and then starting to work with, a backlight in this shot to add a bit more of a rim there. um because you're going to want a little bit of drama. The way that I look at this is very similar to how they did like the first Jurassic Park, and hit a lot of details in shadows. So when you have a scene that's maybe not fully put together, and maybe it's the book that you're focusing on, what I would do is I would maybe keep a bit of a darker scene and hide the rest of those details that you really didn't spend much time on. Like the candles. In my head, I'm thinking, hey, maybe we have those candles, kind of with a nice subsurface material with that backlight kind of leaking through, and have a light source that's sitting on top of the wicks that you could composite small little flames into in post, and it would work out fine. But for that book, what you could do is you could work with just a regular light with a gobo on it, so that you can just showcase the book itself and not focus so much on the rest of the, kind of, I don't want to call it a full environment, but the rest of the presentation, that it's sitting on. So for the book, I think with the metals, I would definitely add some roughness and wear and tear to that. But as a whole, like it's not like it's not a very bad piece. It just comes down to the shader and material process that you're using. The pages on the side, I would definitely ease up on the differences in the diffuse pattern that you have there, because most often you're not going to have like those uh, such harsh lines and breakups that are going on in books. What you'll tend to see is kind of overall splotches and stains that are from, whether it's fingers holding the book, or something spills on a table, it splashes on the pages of the book. It kind of adds a bunch of those little worn details. But in a lot of these, I feel like what we're losing is, or what we're missing is, primarily like the photographic type of lighting that would really showcase this properly. So I see you say, I think that was more of a client specific with the metals and pages. So a bit of tough love that I can give you, and this is from personal experience. And I guess anybody here that's listening to this is that your portfolio pieces don't always have to be your client pieces or that final output. um and the further I've gotten in the industry, I think of them differently. And Luke, this isn't specifically, we're just happen to be on your piece, but I want to make sure I say this as a whole so that we can get it out there. That your client work does not have to be, nor should it always be, your portfolio work. So if it were me looking to put this piece in my portfolio, I might take it past what my client required, and I would add my own bit of love and TLC into the environment, to the scene. Maybe use this book, as the hero asset, and really start to add some nice environment pieces so that you can show your work off in the best light. Because I do know how clients work, and most of the time you deliver an amazing, great piece that you put your passion into, and then they just destroy it with feedback. That's a lot of clients. It's a lot of art directors. It's kind of their job. So I would definitely go a little bit there. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome breakdown. And, Dustin giving you some high level, industry insights on this, as he does a lot of client work with, render shots. So great stuff. All
Yeah,
right,
it's great for a piece early on, man. Like, you keep moving
all right.
forward with it.
Sharon, are you in the house? Sharon, are you here? 10-second shot clock. Cool. So Sharon's in the house. Perfect. All right. So went and did a Wally hard surface model. So as usual, I'm just gonna pop this up into full screen here and kind of browse through all the images. So 2 images, nice and simple. Overall, the modeling looks great, so I can check that off. I don't have any gripes with the modeling. The shapes look good, and when I'm reading the modeling, I'm looking for silhouette, and I am looking at also beveled edges, which actually looking closer, you don't seem to have any. I'm not sure if this was either a direct correlation between you doing sub-D modeling and having your holding edges too tight, or just not beveling your edges overall, regardless of the modeling execution. But that's one of the things that kind of you did it here, where you have some nice breakup in the edges. And the main reason a lot of modelers um, harp about beveling is because in real life there is no, even like a knife or a blade has a slight bevel, right? So that's a clear indicator of what breaks photorealism is perfectly sharp edges, right, on the modeling side. Because there's no, anytime that you bevel an edge, you get a subtle highlight that correlates with every object in real life. So this is why a lot of modelers stress on like beveling, especially for larger shapes, right? And I could tell this cylinder here, so relatively large shape, it's perfectly sharp, right? So that immediately tells me this is CG. And obviously, this is somewhat stylized, but you still want to push the realism of this as much as possible. I can tell that's happening on the hand. So even though you have good shapes and it looks like Wally, pay attention to that. Now, moving a second level, right? Can't see your UV, so I'm just going to judge the texturing. The texturing looks pretty uniform. And I did talk about this previously, was that you want to think about when you're doing grunge and grime, you want to think about areas that are naturally going to have more grunge than others, right? So, for example, this visor part with the eyes, everything's very like a pattern, right? Everything's very uniform. If you think about that VCR example, he did a great job of selecting certain areas. So when you add grunge and grime to everything, it's just too much, right? And you really need that contrast between cleanish areas or safe areas of grime and debris, and also areas that are. So that contrast is what's really gonna, sell the believability of it. And same thing here. So what I would have liked to see is maybe if you pay attention to like a BMX bike or even a car or anything that is on the ground, usually grime shoots up from the bottom, right, through the surfaces, and that's where it gets scattered. If you look at any image of like a four-wheel vehicle that goes through the mud, everything kind of rises and has a direction. Grime and grunge have a reason and usually a direction. That's what tends to tell a better story. So what I would like to see here is maybe have the grunge and the grime kind of build from like the lower areas, right? And kind of radiate up. And in Substance Painter, you have, I believe you use Substance for this, but Mari should have it too, is you have a position map, I believe it's called, and it actually takes into account the direction of your mod and whatever you set up to Y. And you could use that to easily do things that radiate, grunge effects that radiate from the ground. So these are some things to keep in mind. But overall, I do like the texture, and I do like that you tended to kind of put the, tell a better story with this by adding dirt. It's not a super clean model. I definitely like the kind of the wear and tear on the logo here. This looks very patterny. This is a big thing when I break down textures. This could be how you laid out your UVs, but you don't want, if you're going to have repeating patterns, you can do it, but not close to each other, right? So you got to either through your UVs or textures kind of hide that if you need it for your particular workflow. But here in the treads, I could tell you right now that those UVs are stacked, and it sticks out like a sore thumb on a pattern, right? So what you could do, this is a little trick that I use, is if I don't want to have basically unique or individual UVs for a whole tile, because that tends to take up a lot of UV space, right? Is maybe you could create a pattern of maybe 3 treads, right? Have an individual pattern, and that repeats, right? So even though you do have a repeating pattern, it breaks it up to the human eye because it's not right next to each other, okay? The last thing that I want to touch on is the lighting. I think the lighting could have been pushed a little bit more on this, like Dustin alluded to earlier. Having like a rim light on this, I think would have worked, especially just considering this is more of a dramatic shot. Not too dramatic where you don't see the details, but again, like these treads here, they're kind of getting lost in the background. So I think a nice little rim light would really just help push this piece. And, I do like the fact that you have this blurred, this background. I would even push the blur in that depth of field a little bit more. But overall, it's a solid piece. I think you're hitting everything in one piece, which is good. You got modeling, you got UVs, you got textures, and also you got presentation. You put a background in here. So that's a solid effort. And I think with these little tips, you'll be able to take this a lot further. So great job. And I can't wait to see what you come up with next. Cool. All right. I'll let you take the next one, Dustin. Let me get out of full screen here. It's not what I wanted. So, Aniket, you here?
Is that the same piece that we looked at or that we passed earlier?
No, it's not. Aniket, you in the house? Yeah, so the this is being live streamed on YouTube, so it'll be on my YouTube channel. You'll have all this basically available to you, and if you're on my email list, you're going to get an email reminder with this. So anybody that's not on my email list, I put a links in the chat already quite a bit, and if you want to jump on these portfolio reviews, definitely sign up, because it looks like we're probably going to make through all these today. But once you're on my email list, you'll get heads up and be able to jump on this list earlier. Cool. So Aniket's not here. Let's keep rocking. Last name Jerker. You here? Hopefully I'm not butchering it too bad. I'm trying. Jerker. You in the house? You got 10 seconds. Cool.
All
All
right,
right,
let's scroll down to the bottom of these ones.
that's it. He just asked 3.
Okay. Long time making, proud of the way it came up. All right, I was just reading a little bit that was there. So with this one, as far as the PlayStation controllers go, I enjoy rendering them. I have a personal model that I purchased because I'm not the great modeler like that, so I purchased one. But I enjoy playing with different colorways and stuff on these things. So a couple things for me are pretty much in the details. So the PlayStation controllers for the PS5, when you look at them, they have like the kind of the button insignia, the little logos and stuff that's all over the thumb pads. And so what I would really like to do, or like to see you do with this piece, is like dive into those details. And I know that this is on JL's screen and we can't go, it wouldn't might not be worth the time to go into, Google and search and look for macro shots. But a lot of this really boils down to the references and the technicalities in how you place materials and where. Because at first glance, to be honest, like the materials look fine. Like it reads as a PlayStation 5 controller. And some of the differences there, are just in the materials and the texturing, not even like the actual shader properties itself. So, from a modeling standpoint, what I'd like to see are the actual holes that all of the buttons go into. Um, like currently it looks as if they're just, kind of sat and, and pressed in. And I'd like to see like the actual beveled edges of those holes for each of the buttons. That would make a lot of sense. But for something like this, if you're going for a clean product shot, such as this one right here that's on the screen, I would 100% focus on lighting. And it's just like you'll hear me harp about lighting all day long, because generally speaking, you can ruin an amazing model with bad lighting, or you can take or you can take a mediocre or a bad model and make it look great with lighting. Just at its base properties. And I've done both of them. So with this one, what I would like to see is probably like a rim light that's up and over, over the model, that's kind of throwing like a sheen of light, or reflection over the entire controller. Because what it will do is really set off those edges nicely, but it's going to give you a really realistic directionality, to everything that you have here. And, like in this type of shot right now, like you can see on the highly specular little thumb pads that there are light sources because you can kind of see them blinging off, but there's kind of a flat rest of the model. And so what you can do is really tone that, into a more directional light, and you can start to post, a lot of different lights up around the model so that when you go and you rotate it, like, you're essentially able to catch kind of nice rim lights and shadows and things like that across the entire piece. Um, but that's pretty much what I have, for this. It's kind of difficult because, again, we don't have any wireframes or anything to, really look into that. Um, but as a whole, it really boils down to adjusting the way that the material properties are working based on reference and the design details and stuff like that, and then just making sure that you have the holes for each of the buttons, um, because they're definitely not smushed through the plastic. So I'd look into that a little bit, but overall, it looks solid.
Awesome, awesome. Great feedback from Dustin, and I second all of that as well. So I think a little bit more work. This could turn a good piece with the good proper lighting. It's a great one. So let's keep rocking and rolling. We have just a couple more. We're going into about the second hour and 15 minutes. But I think if we power through, we'll be able to get through everybody, which is awesome. So Maxim, are you here? Are you in the house with us? Let me know in the chat. Oh, okay. All right. So let's do it. Just kind of thrown off here. The names are different, but I'll take it that's you. So let's go ahead and do it. This is a great piece. Just going to scrub through something that I really, really like. This is kind of this really illustrates the point. This is something that I was alluding to on the Enterprise here, and this kind of illustrates the point the best. Is that he has a shot grounding this into reality where the floor plane also has the nice depth of field here. So not everything is perfectly in focus. That kind of does two things. One, this is what most cameras have, is they do have a depth of field or aperture that blurs things that are out of that focus range. And then secondly, it art directs the attention to a certain detail. And this is where the money shot is with the details. So he's pushing everything back with the blurriness, right? And your brain is not bombarded as a viewer, and your eye knows exactly where to go. And this is something, not to get too deep off a tangent, but this is what great artists, even in 2D, do, is they use angles and lighting to direct the viewer on what they want to see. That's the difference between an average portfolio and a great portfolio. Is you also not only do you know the 3D side, but you also know the just aesthetics, presentation, and just those general art properties that allow you to control where the viewer's eye naturally tends to go to. But and then now he has these general breakdowns where he's just showing off the model. Everything's even, right? Kind of this neutral dark background. There's nothing getting lost in transition. I can see highlights and I can see shadows, right? Everything pops out. If you squint, you could see this perfect silhouette. And this is exactly what I was referring to in previous examples. He did a good job at obviously, dictating this. And, if this was, a light gray match this, then that would lose a lot of the pop. So you could see the silhouette. Amazing job with the textures. And this is the beauty, or this is the difference between a good model and a great model, is that a great model, you can't really, even if it's a game time asset, right? You don't know this is a 3D model, right? If you squint, you don't see any faceting. All the curved areas are properly handled. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great thing. Like all these round areas, like me as a 3D artist, I typically look at round areas first and see how if the 3D artist knew how to handle those correctly. Now I could nitpick, and this could look a little bit like faceting, but overall, so many curved shapes. He used the right number of subdivisions for these close-ups, right? Because that's the other thing. When you're creating hero assets, I know a lot of game artists get hung up on like poly counts, but if you're just doing this for a portfolio piece, allow yourself that extra bit of resolution on your mesh to really sell it. You still know the optimization, but you don't want to have this arbitrary number where you're just kind of killing your presentation and renders for doing something super low poly, right? And I think he nailed it here with the curved areas having the right number of subdivisions, right? And again, this looks great. This looks very, very good. The large cylinders have the right number of subdivisions. The smaller cylinders with smaller radius have the right number of subdivisions. And there you go. So this is the game asset. It's triangulated, and this is, even though this is not a quad-based workflow, this is still a thing of beauty because he knew what to use on the right resolution on the right shapes. And this is something that I talked to about before, is that you can save on your flats, right? Meaning like this doesn't require flat areas is where you want to save poly counts on, right? Where you can save on that budget by having less topology. And look at that. Lo and behold, flat areas here, boom. You don't need that much resolution. Curved areas, he actually put in he knew to allocate more polygons to the curved areas. And this is where you get, a lot of people think, well, sub D workflow is the only thing with topology. That's not true. Even with game assets, there is a topology aspect of it, It's just knowing where to spend to hit that poly budget that you have for your model, right? And this model is kind of a master class here on that concept. Um, but there's nothing I could really just say about this, to be honest. I think it's a flawless execution, and I really can't think of anything. Maybe I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, there's that one thing, and let me hit him up. But off the top of the head, I think you did a great job, Maxim, and look forward to see where you take your work from here. Great job. Cool. I'll let you take the next one, Dustin. First of all, let's call roll. Elias, are you with us? You got 10 seconds here. Cool. All right. It's all yours, Dustin.
All right, let's scroll through what's here.
I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, it's not my computer, man. Okay.
Yeah, he has a lot. He has a lot of
Yep.
breakdowns. A lot.
This is gonna be a really harsh critique. I hope he's ready for that. Add a rim light. Add some sheen to your fabric. That's like maybe the same color as diffuse, but like way less saturated and brighter. That's it.
I'm like, where's he going with this? Like, the hearts on this one? Jesus, man, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, no, man, it looks great. So we can nitpick it though, but I was serious about the sheen, and I was serious about a rim light. A rim light would really throw this whole thing into a different dimension, of reality. So it could be one rim light, or you could throw rim lights from either side and kind of catch the full silhouette there. But definitely get a rim light in there.
My bad.
What are we switching to?
I have no idea. I hit like this arrow, and then it took me, I think, to his next
Oh,
piece.
yeah, it takes you to the next one.
Yeah.
So the rim light is huge, but then sheen on your fabric is another big one that I would look to adjust. And that's just like it looks like there's a slight amount on there. Like as I look up towards the top, it's like you can almost see like just a slight amount of sheen that's kind of coming from there. And maybe take the light that's back there and move it a little bit further forward into the side and just brighten it up so you can really catch a nice silhouette. But a lighter sheen is going to allow you to roll like with all of that fabric and just give it all a little bit more of a soft look compared to the metal that's there, rather than just looking quite a bit less shiny, obviously. You can also add a roughness to that sheen that will help it out, have kind of patches and a little bit more wear. So I'm looking at, what I'm just going to call the blood details in this thing. On the front there, like you have a nice bit, of the red design that's on the front. And what I would like to almost see is a little bit more of that that's just scuffed off. It doesn't have to be any like crazy scratches or anything like that, but breaking up those harsh lines. Um, and then realistically, it's kind of the same thing with the fabric on the spear, and the design that's there. So if can you head up to one of those,
Yeah.
one of the shots that show it?
So what you looking
Yeah,
for the
so
spear?
that's good. This shot here is
All right.
fine. So you have some of those slight breakups there. I can see as we get closer. I would add quite a few more of those to really make it look, I guess, as battle worn as the rest of the spear. Um, but dude, like the design work and the attention to detail on this thing is insane. Like how intricate like each little bevel is, going from like the spearhead to the shaft. Like there's design work in there. Like it's fantastic. Super dope, man. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to really go on on this piece as far as critiquing goes. Um but the feedback is really just in presentation and a couple little things you could do with the shaders, but it looks great overall.
Yeah, good insights from Dustin. Definitely gave you some high level advice, and I'm definitely impressed as well. So great work
Yeah.
on this. All right, I'll take the next one. We're getting to the end of the line here. So, Powell, you in the house with us? All right, cool. So he's here. So let's do it. Let me reset this. Start the countdown. Zoom this up here, and just gonna kind of do a quick scroll through. So these are always good to include if you can. Just a live viewer just gives potential client studio just a little bit more insight and adds just that extra level of interactivity and breakdowns for your pieces. But I'm going to head up to this eye candy shot here. I think you did a great job with this overall. The modeling looks good. Looks to be a game asset, just the way your topology was laid out, which is fine. Overall, this is great. I like how you have kind of a studio setup here where you grounded this in reality. You grounded this at least to a floor plane, which is always nice. You have the breakup on those larger shapes, and this is how you create visual interest, is on these bigger shapes. You still have panel detail that you executed via texturing, which adds that level of complexity, right? If these had no detail here, this would not be as, I guess, intriguing. So I definitely like that. I think some of these shots could be lit better. A lot of this thing is a lot of these details are getting hid by shadow occluded. So all this detail here is gone. Not sure what your lighting setup was. Were you using HDRI light, but basically you could have relit some of these to a specific angle. I think this is one of your stronger kind of presentations. Now, modeling solid, texturing is solid as well. Something that I would have liked to see, and this is kind of goes back. I'm going to be repeating myself quite a bit here, but a lot of these details are getting lost in this background. So, a previous example, that dark gray worked good because it created contrast. Here, the dark gray doesn't create as much contrast and actually hides and obscures your silhouette, right? So if you squint here, right, this is what I call the squint test. If you squint, a lot of these shapes, they're getting lost, right? So you want to, this is why people green screen, right? If you want to separate something and you do a contrasty color, right? And obviously you're not going to wear a lime green shirt if you are green screening yourself. Same thing with blue screens. You're not going to wear a blue shirt, and this is the same principle. Think about it like that. Great contrast between your foreground and your background. So I would definitely go probably a little bit more neutral. That way, a lot of these shapes are not getting lost. Rim lights on metals usually work pretty good too, just to get things to pop. All these hands here are getting kind of dull. The other thing about like the lighting in general, when you have a lot of like normal maps, if you work in Substance Painter, you'll see this a lot where like you're cranking all this detail in your piece, and then like you kind of get a dead angle in your HDRI, everything looks flat, right? So normal maps react to light. So all those scratches, all that normal map detail, right? All these angles, all these indented creases that you have, they're going to react to the lighting. So like Dustin said, Lighting can make an average model look extraordinary. On the flip side, extraordinary to average if you don't work on the lighting. And I think this is an extraordinary model, but I think just doing a little bit of lighting work could make it extraordinary presentation. Let's break down some of the passes here. See if I could, and also your UVs. This is good UV layouts. Like this is what I was saying before. If you're a game artist, especially, break down your UVs. That shows me that you're competent in your UV packing. And a lot of artists will obsess over low poly, but then have the most inefficient UV layout. So just like a poly limit is a restriction in the game dev pipeline, so is texture sizes, right? Because if this was poorly laid out, he could probably get away with a 2K texture. If these UVs were wasting a lot of space, I'll probably have to do a 4K just to get the same amount of detail. So this is an extremely solid UV layout, and I could tell you know what you're doing by the packing of these shells. I'm pretty impressed here. In most softwares, you'll have a UV efficiency, and usually you want to aim for about 70%. Most packages will tell you, or how efficient your UVs are, and I could definitely tell this is probably over 70% efficiency. So overall, great job. The only thing I would work on is the lighting and also just the background here, just to give more of that pop with the silhouette and not lose any details. But amazing work.
Yeah, that's great.
Next one's all yours. Character. So SK, you in the house? You got 10 seconds. Yeah, anytime. Glad you made it out. Great work. All right, looks like SK didn't make it, so we'll keep rocking and rolling. Abdo, you in here with us? Okay, Abdo looks like
it looks good.
Yeah,
so did the last one. They look good. I mean, it's kind of rough.
Jay, you in here with us? Mr. Perry, you got 10 seconds. All right, cool. So Jay's in the building. Perfect. Let's hide this, and it's all yours, man.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go ahead and scroll. Let's do the scroll on this one.
That's it. That's the end of the line.
Wow. All right, let's. I'm curious about. Head back down just a little bit. I keep trying to control your screen like it's mine. All right, little ways more so to the concept art. There we go. Okay. All right, let's head back up. We can go up to the first shot. Man, this is. I need one of these. Start flying around, man. So, a couple things, in the presentation, is that this is one that I would definitely deal with, heavily, or let me rephrase that. I would heavily rely on backlighting and maybe just one key light for the seat. So ideally, what I would be looking for is having some translucency, in the wings, in the fabric that's there, to kind of show that light coming through. Just imagine like dragon wings, right? As you can see the light coming through in the subsurface scattering that's happening there. So some nice subsurface, or translucency, maybe an opacity map, for the fabric that's actually on those. depending on what it is. Would be cool to see some light coming through. It'll also show off the silhouette and the entire thing. Um, Sometimes I do struggle with having colored gel lights in display shots because it can make it, you know, a little bit different to, or a little bit difficult to kind of like see the colors that are meant to be there. And it's especially when you know, on this case it's all off to one side, it's kind of pulling detail away. So maybe if you had, you know, like the rim lights were green, and then you had, you know, just a white key light to kind of show off the primary details, that could work as well. um but overall, I mean, I feel like the texturing is solid. I feel like the paneling work that's there. I'm not sure if that was sculpted or if that was you know, in ZBrush, wherever that may have been.
He has
Um
a breakdown of that. You could tell if you want normal. There's
yeah,
a
there we go.
normal. Yep. So it's in the normal.
Okay. So what I would have looked to do with that is have that seam and that crease quite a bit smaller, because what it looks like is like those are, you know, really heavy pieces of metal that are stuck together. And so when I'm thinking of something like this, it kind of goes, you know, past just like the creative like visual side, but then into more physics and like what would I need to make this thing actually fly? And that would be really light, you know, kind of thin metals, stuff like that. And so I would definitely look to take that seam and make it much smaller so it didn't look like huge pieces of steel that were, you know, forced together there. Um, but as a whole, man, you've got some really nice breakup. Um, you know, on the surfaces, kind of what I've been talking about with the, you know, with the diffuse textures. I think you could use smaller details as far as like that those normal imperfections go, and kind of make them a bit smaller and more subdued and just scratch like, versus some of the larger dents. You can kind of see it a little bit on the wings in this shot. Um, but yeah, man, I mean, overall, it seems pretty solid. The lantern that's on top, put a light in that thing. Like it would totally make sense. Maybe even, I'm not sure if that's like like a headlight on the front there. Um, but I would maybe light some of that up just a little bit to kind of show that, you know, show its use. But you know, as a piece, as a whole, it looks pretty solid. You know, like we could dive into, you know, the details and all of that stuff, you know, all day, but it's a solid piece. I think there's just a few creative decisions that could be made, you know, to showcase this a little bit better, and it'd be spot on.
Awesome. All right. Great feedback from Dustin. I'll take the next one.
Sure.
Pop back up here. Show this. So we're almost at the end of the line. So great work, Jay. Uh, Mr. Jane, I'm going to say your last name. You in the building? You got 10 seconds. Mr. Jane, you with us? All right. So this. Oh, there we go. All right. He's in. Perfect. So let's get to it. Let me reset this, start this up, full screen. And I'm just going to do a quick scrub through of what you got.
It's pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. So good breakdowns. Use UDOMs. Great packing on the UVs, from what I could tell. Topology looks clean. Oddly enough, you used Unreal, but this actually looks more like a VFX workflow. So you got UDOMs and what looks to be a sub D workflow, and you know there's in 3D, there's really no hard rules on what you use to get what. I know we tend to get stuck on programs and which is best for what, but at the end of the day, just showing the knowledge that in the expertise that you have and being able to bring something to life, regardless of the software that you're using. I think that's what's most important. So
Yeah.
let's see what you got here. I honestly, like Dustin said, this looks very, very good. I mean, you went through, you rigged this, you animated it. That's the thing too about when you rig and animate something. This gives you a different level of, I guess, breaking down your skill set, especially for hard surface. Something you'll know for a lot of hard surface concepts that look good is that when you actually take to rig and animate them, they can't move. So you have all this cool detail, but that artist they only have the art side down. There's kind of a engineering side as a hard surface model that you have to do, even if you're not a full blown rigger, to make sure that when you hand this off to a rigger, that it could actually be moved, right? Because anybody can go in and create something super complex, kit bash, but can that actually be moved and applied in a production workflow? And there's a lot of, I know I'm going on a tangent, but a lot of artists get caught into doing really cool conceptual work or really just detailed models. But at the end of the day, unless you're just doing this to, if you want to be employed in a production, that asset's going to have to be rigged and animated, right? For the most part, like a mech would. And this shows that not only you have the art side down, but the technical and this could actually be animated. So kudos to you pushing this. And I'm not sure if you did everything on your own, but this is even if you didn't and you handed off to a rigger and animator, this just gives you a next level of validity as a 3D artist. Ambient occlusion, normal map, you have all the details there. Let me see if this was your own. Was this your own concept here, or you followed? Okay, he didn't rig and animate it for a concepting model. Okay, cool. So he did do the concepting. So this is like next level stuff because he concepting is its own beast, and
Yeah.
a lot of great 3D artists think they have to, or modelers think they have to be concept artists too, and that's often the case. Is they follow a poor concept, and even though the model's flawlessly executed upon the concept, your model is only going to be as strong as the concept. So if you're not a great concept artist, then there's plenty of concept artists that would love to just have their work 3D model. Just hit them up on ArtStation, Facebook, Instagram, ask permission, right? But you nailed everything. So I'm highly impressed by this. You have a good breakup of big shapes and also smaller shapes. And even with your bigger shapes, you broke this up with decals, you broke it up with paneling, and you broke it up with texture, right? So, I'm impressed, and there's nothing really I can take away from this piece, to be honest.
Put a rim light on it. Honestly, man, like I would love to have this model. Like this is good. Like it's solid,
it is
man.
good. The only thing I would say is just from a realism standpoint, especially when you deal with mountains, um, usually you get some fog and some, I guess, blurriness as you push out into distance, and I think that would create a little bit more, separation and add more realism basically to the environment. But yeah, that's just nitpicking, man. You killed this, and I can't wait to see your development as an artist. I think you got a great future as a 3D artist ahead of you. So
Yeah.
that's the 5 minutes. Great work, brother. Keep rocking it. So you're up next, Dustin. Let's just do our roll call. Mr. Amar, you in the building? You got 10 seconds to let us know you're here. Amar, are you here? Mr. Amar? All right. So Mark looks like he couldn't make it today. Let's move on. Alexei, you in the building?
Yeah, he's chatting. All right.
Oh yeah. That's him. Okay, so
Been here for a minute.
Cool. Go for it,
Yeah,
Dustin.
let's just scroll, man.
Yep.
Man, it's been so long since I've seen like a crank drilled. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, this one caught my eye immediately when
Yep. All right,
when it
next.
popped up.
No feedback. Next. I'll take 20B. He's been here for hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes waiting for feedback. It looks great, man. Like, I'll be dead honest. Like, I could literally go to my garage and pull out something like that. You know, like it has every bit of detail that you would expect to see on a tool. Um, you know, everything from the wear and tear to the way that, you know, there's paint splatter and, you know, scuffs and smudges. Like, it really just makes sense. And not only that, but each of these different materials have their own properties, which I think is what's most impressive to me, right? Is that, you know, like, I mean, when you look at the metal, it looks like metal. Some of the metal has rust, other parts, you know, that normally wouldn't have too much rust don't. Um, and you're not really dealing with repetitive textures. Like, I don't know that I've seen any repeats on this thing at all. So there is completely solid. Like, okay. See, this is like choked up on the mic right now. I don't even know what to say about it other than like the presentation is good. The lighting is good. The background is good. It sticks out from the, you know, like there's literally everything about it is solid. Let me see a wireframe. I'm going to nitpick something.
Yeah, he does have a wireframe.
There's no wireframe? Oh,
No, right there. Yeah.
okay. Even that makes sense.
It does.
You're really not wasting. You're not wasting polygons.
Yeah, you could tell on the flats, like he kept it pretty clean, big
Yeah.
spans. He
Solid.
didn't spend on it.
Jeez. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm sorry you've been sitting here for a long time, man. But look, the only thing I got to say is like throw a rim light on it for real. Like, I don't know. Like, we'll just have to put it at that. It's a solid piece. I would let it ride 100%.
Yeah. I think I don't foresee you having any issues finding landing work with this type of assets you're making.
Yeah.
Solid work. Cool. And that's a compliment. You know, like, you know, when we're just speechless and we don't want to force feedback here. There's just things that are like top tier that anything we say might just confuse and detract. This is just flawless execution on this. So great work.
Yeah, that's really good. Like, it looks like you could literally just pick it up and use it. I mean, it's that kind of realism. It's crazy.
All right, I don't have a name here, so I'm just, I guess, Paulin, are you in the building here? I believe that's probably your first name. You with us, Paulin?
Yep, he's here. I'll be right back. But yeah, he's
All right,
here.
perfect.
In
Cool.
the chat.
All right, I'm gonna start up the timer. All right, man. You didn't. You actually lucked out. I'm gonna review your work here. Which one you want? But the shoes. Okay. This is something that if you went through the form and you got skipped and you're mad at me for some reason, don't be. I actually was very specific, and the reason I'm covering it is because I actually didn't. That was on me. I didn't screen it out. But everybody that submitted a form, I told them pick one piece because I'm not. When you're condensing all this into a short, you know, or trying to be as efficient as possible, we don't have time to pick which piece, right? So everybody that for some reason submitted, like, hey, where's mine at? Is if you were here and you submitted, it's because you didn't link to a specific piece and you just linked to your general portfolio, right? So, but like I said, you can follow the link I posted and just submit it. You'll be on my list. Next time I open up, you'll be the first to submit. Okay. So let me hide this banner here and just kind of do a quick scroll. And I like them. I like these boots a lot. Relatively low poly here, but it works. It's you don't, like I said, you could definitely spend on the straights. You could definitely say poly counts for a game asset. And even though this is relatively low poly, at least from this angle, right? If we zoom in, it'll probably start to break. But that's the difference between knowing what you want to display, which LOD level of detail you're using, and that proximity to the camera, right? But at a certain point, if you don't use enough subdivisions, curved surfaces, will break, or the faceting will be noticeable if you get close enough, right? Texturing, I think the texturing looks good. I think for worn boots, they could have been pushed. I don't know the level of wear. Not everything has to be worn. That's something that I do want to throw out there. Like a light wear and tear is also okay too. Because this is something you'll see a lot of artists will UV and go to substance, but then like just it's always a super grungy thing, and it doesn't have to be that. And I think this is a good example. Um, but I think this could have been maybe a little bit more art directed. So just pick, like for me, if I'm looking at this as a wear and tear, probably the front is going to be scuffed up more than something like the inside, right? If you look at the inside of the shoe, it's kind of protected, and that basically is the differentiation between a good texture artist and a great texture artist, is where they look at a reference and they really start to think, where would this scuff actually be more likely to happen, right? And if you don't have that knowledge, you could just look at boots, right? And things that are typically protected from a corner, right, are usually safer, right? So you probably wouldn't get that much, wear and tear on a corner like this, because it's just hard to scruff up your boot, right? And I think you could have art directed this a little bit better by having areas like this more scuffed up, and then maybe having inside areas, right, more cleaner, or a little bit cleaner, right? But overall, I like it. The textile density is good on this. Textile density is important when you basically are doing these type of assets, because everything has a similar resolution. If I really look at it close, I think your textile density here is a little different. This reads just a little bit more crisp. So it's not blaring, but if to the trained eye, this looks like you have more pixel resolution here than you do here. Slightly. It's not overkill, but if I were to take this into Maya or Blender, somewhere where I could see the textile density on that shell, I'd probably bet money that they're not like the same exact one, right? And these straps are actually higher. Let's see if we have a UV layout that. No UV layout, so I can't really look at it. But overall, solid piece. The other thing that I will say is I'm not a fan of these like strong shadows with, I know you're trying to kind of set it in reality, but I think these are a little distracting, especially with these long shadows. I'm not a fan of that. It's a little distracting. So I would have probably opted to go with softer shadows and strategically either light link this to the plane where you're not getting this long, super long shadow, or just change, the overall position of your lighting in general. But overall, solid work, and I think you're off to a great start. Dustin, let's see, you're up next. So, Jack, you with us? Jack, you in the building? All right, looks like Jack didn't make it. 2Q, you in here? You got 10 seconds. Nope. Looks like 2Q didn't make it either. Demetrio, you in the building? And I apologize if I'm slaughtering any of these names. So looks like Demetrio's here. So let's do it, Dustin. I'll give you the complimentary scroll through.
Yeah.
And guess what? This is the only image here, so no scroll through.
No feedback. Let's move on. We're good. So this is, the hard part about something like this is that I'm going to have to really nitpick it. And two, because there's no, other images, other angles, anything like that. It makes it kind of difficult. So a couple things here. The entire scene is well lit. It shows a nice silhouette of the subject, like actually both of them. It really makes sense. The hard part about this is that you can tell that so many of these assets are repeating. So each of the washers that she's standing at, are the exact same, and you can tell because the surface imperfections and things are all in the same spots, as well as whatever it is, the cabinets or whatever behind the cat are all the exact same. So what I would do in that case is, especially if it's just a single image, is I would go in Photoshop and make some adjustments and, either erase a couple of the imperfections or the big ones, or add some, another layer of imperfections onto those to kind of break them up. So the whole scene kind of looks grungy, but the glass on the washers is pretty clean and straightforward. I would expect to see some like nice smudges on that, a little bit of edge grime, kind of, going around the edges. And, as I look up, kind of making my way up the scene here, like the ventilation in the back is like a perfect metal texture. Um, I would expect that to be probably something like galvanized so that it would have a nice breakup in the reflections and things like that. But I would also add some of that grunge and dust and grime into that as well, because it would really make sense, given the rest of the environment in the scene. Um, but overall, man, like there's really not a ton here to actually nitpick. From a creative standpoint, it's really just more the technical execution and things that a trained eye is going to look at. Like if I was going through this and, just scrolling through ArtStation and I were to see this, if I wasn't asked to give feedback and having to look at things that were off, the only thing I really would have noticed is the glass is perfect, and the piece behind the cat, whatever the, that shelf is, the cabinets back there, I can see that same big blotch that's like repeating as we go in. So it's really good to use the assets that you have in your scene just to kind of fill things out. But I would definitely take a look at, adjusting the way those textures are. If it's procedural, just kind of rotate, the textures a little bit, per piece, and that can definitely help. Um, I mean, that's kind of all I got. Like it's a really well executed piece.
Cool. Awesome feedback. Let's jump to the next one here. We're almost done. So Manuel, you with us? You in the building? Cool. All right. So Manuel's here. So let's get to it. Let's get busy. All right, full screen. I'm just gonna kind of go down here and look at your breakdowns, get a sense of what you were aiming for. It looks like to be kind of a game environment setup, modular style. Great breakdown with the texturing here. I mean, I think you did an amazing work here, job just creating this environment. And looks like you created all most of these assets by hand, which is pretty remarkable because there's a lot of breakup here. Even though this is just grass and a lot of vegetation, you don't. You did a very good job, even though these are repeating assets, of hiding that. And this is kind of alludes to what Dustin was talking about in the previous one about those patterns, and we mentioned that quite a bit. But you don't really have a lot of patterns here you could recognize, and that's the strategic layout that you did. A lot of times, that's kind of another leg of a great 3D artist is they know how to hide their UV seams or their
Yeah.
patterns, right? And what not only what you show, but what you know how to hide some of the things that give away kind of the CG look. So as far as the modeling, I really like what you did here. Just the vegetation, the variety of vegetation, and the execution of this. This looks like a very, if we were to play Uncharted, that's what I'm kind of reminded of. So video game, somewhat realistic, somewhat stylized, more towards the realistic end. And you do show a wide range of skills here with using Maya, ZBrush, Substance, and Unreal, and even SpeedTree. This is great presentation. The only thing I wouldn't nitpick, I love the breakdowns, but I think for this one shot, I would probably have completed this and drop in Unreal just a background, a better environment that actually set this like a mountaintop or something where I could really see this in a actual game being played. I think that would set it off. It doesn't detract from your skills, but I think from the presentation standpoint, I would have loved to either have you repeat some of these assets more, or just maybe even create a more interesting composition. Right now, there's everything's kind of in the same plane. Look at photography. Look at people that do photography of landscapes. And usually the key to a good photograph is having a clear subject and also adding depth by having foreground, midground, and background elements, right? And this is why I said you don't really have any foreground elements, you don't have any background elements. So it doesn't take away from your technical execution, which is above the charts. But I think the presentation, if you kind of knew those concepts a little bit better or study those and try to replicate an image, and have a true environment with a clear focal, point, like the tree or maybe even the tire, I think that would have knocked it up even a notch as far as the presentation. But I mean, overall, I'm impressed, and I think you got a great future as an environment artist. So great job, Manuel. Okay, another VHS, Mr. Adil, you in the building? Cool. All right, saw you, Dustin. So we'll put this up, start the scroll. There you go.
Sweet. So I'm gonna read nostalgia Sony Walkman vintage yellow. Game ready art piece pays homage to the iconic cassette. Yeah, so I was trying to figure out whether this was a little bit more, to be a bit more realistic. I kind of thought it was, um, and then wasn't sure. So um, I feel like for a piece like this, one of the biggest things that you can do is make sure that all of your materials have the proper properties. And what I'm seeing here is, and the reason I'm saying that is because the plastic buttons um, don't really read as plastic. Everything kind of looks like one solidified piece of like the same material. And so it's kind of hard to, for the brain to look at it and say, hey, each of these parts are different. Um, and so, what I would look to do with this is one, make sure that you have nice beveled edges on everything that realistically should have it, which in a Walkman is most of this piece. But especially those buttons, you would expect to see like some nice edge highlights and things like that. Kind of like a plasticky, reflection and sheen to that, maybe broken up by a roughness map and so on. And then, for the metal casing that's yellow, in the shadow of that gobo that you have, or the light shining in, like you can see a lot of really nice color, but we start to lose a lot of that color once you get to the overexposed areas. So what I might look at doing in a piece like this is kind of toning down that light a ways, um, to allow yourself to see quite a bit of the detail that's actually happening on the front of that piece. Because in the shadow, we can see that you have some nice maps in there that are providing grunge over over the whole front of it, but you can't really get that in most of the shot because it's blown out and it kind of has a lack of detail from that sun. Um, but overall, it looks like a pretty solid model. I think it really just boils down to the way that the lighting and things are executed, some of the material properties being a little bit different and varying, and maybe having a kind of a window. It looks like you almost have one modeled in there, having a little bit of a of a breakup in like translucency and stuff so you could see there. um yeah, I couldn't find the perfect setting for for exposure, and that's fine. So I guess as a general bit of knowledge, like when I'm working on something like this, like if it doesn't work, I don't do it. And what I mean by that is I've been in those situations where you try a lighting style and you really want it to work because maybe that gobo hits the way that the shot looks and you're like, man, this is it. I would work with that. And you can't get that setting just right. And it's always blown out and what have you. There's two things that you could do. One is just adjust the lighting, come up with kind of a different lighting scheme for it. Or secondly, work with a post production pipeline in Photoshop that allows you to rebuild that beauty layer, using your different render passes. And at that point, you can go in and really adjust it, using an EXR or whatnot. So creatively, I think one of the bigger things that I just kind of for of nostalgia's sake that I would like to see with this is maybe having it on like cement, like a sidewalk rather than wood. Kind of back and I guess just in my brain, it's like, I would expect to see it maybe like on a cinder block with some like chain link fence behind it, like an old schoolyard or something back there. That would really make it pop. And if you were going for a bit more of like a positioned like studio look, just have it on a cinder block sitting there. One could be vertical, the other one could kind of be just leaning up against the cinder block, and then just throw like a nice 3-point lighting at it and you would be good and it would completely show it off with all of the details. But yeah, I think that's about it as a whole for this one.
Cool. Awesome breakdown by Dustin. And lo and behold, we have one more left. Yeah. So Curtis, you in the house? Curtis, you got 5 more seconds. Awesome. Curtis is in the building. Awesome. All right, let's put my timer here. And you're the last warrior standing, Curtis. I'm just gonna kind of scrub through. And you know what, Dustin, you want to take this because I feel like this is this is all you, man.
Okay, well, hold on, because we're actually getting somewhere as we're scrolling down. So I was looking at this and I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll take this one. And as you started scrolling down, it's like my feedback was, yeah. So let's see the final. Let's see the actual final shot, because I feel like the first image isn't the final. Like this one here is not a final. That's more of like an ambient.
I think he just tried different styles for the final.
Wow, there's so much to unpack in all of these. So maybe, all right. So is the bottom one the reference, or is that the final render? Yeah, there's so many lighting scenarios. So the reason why I was thinking to take this one, um, is, I've worked with quite a few of my students on the same exact type of stuff. And so the bigger things, okay, so the final one is the final render. All right, so that totally makes sense. Um, I would totally have a brighter and more directional key light to really like make the cork pop at the top, and maybe have like a kind of like a foil or similar, kind of show some of the sheen across the label. But overall, depending on the style of lighting that you're going for, a lot of beverage companies will render or even photograph differently, in different styles. But overall, the execution's not bad. I mean, the bottom model is generally a fairly simple model. The cork looks great. The material properties on everything look pretty good. Um, what I would think to do is have a little bit more of like gradient lighting coming in from the sides, and maybe much longer, so that you're catching the full silhouette of the bottle going all the way up. Um, and you could actually do that with HDRIs. At CG Hacks, we have this HDRI lights pack that basically has like just this one gradient in there that I use for everything, and I can just stretch it all the way, for lights like this to just capture that whole edge. Um, and then it just fades out nicely. So overall, I think just a little bit more exposure in a few certain areas.
Something like
Um,
that, Dustin.
yeah, pretty much like that. It's like that nice little key light up at the top, and those rim lights that go up the side. It allows you to see some nice light refraction. Um, as a whole, in almost any type of beverage, like I would add imperfections to the refractive properties of the glass, so you can actually add like bump maps to the glass itself. You can also do like this like little bits of displacement, normal maps that have some slight micro scratches and things like that. If you want it to be perfect for like a product shot, it would definitely be a little bit more clean. But I mean, the more you can do to like throw um some realism into like having liquid in there and everything kind of working the best, like it, as a whole right now it looks pretty good. So yeah, definitely work on lighting a little bit and just some slight imperfections that would be in the glass naturally, and it's a solid piece.
You could tell Dustin the way he knows his stuff about lighting, the way he's actually lit on camera. He has his little key light, his rim light, the perfect background. So not only does he put in that work into his 3D art, but also his video production as well. But folks, that was the last warrior standing. So great job, Curtis. Appreciate you showing up, and actually everybody showing up. This was our first live event, and I think it actually went pretty well. We went like savages here, almost. It started at 1, going on 4, so almost 3 hours. Make sure you guys jump on, the list if you guys want to be notified. For those that didn't get to participate, I give heads up exclusively to kind of my list, and then I open it up to the public. So that's the best way of, making sure that you are able to participate in these. But I'm going to show you some of Dustin's work here. There's the portfolio review. Sign up. So with that link, you could sign up. Here's Dustin's work. And yeah, so he really knows his stuff, especially when it comes to presenting, rendering, and doing photography. All these things blend together. So appreciate Dustin. I think he was perfect wingman for this, in his expertise in the field of just doing product photography, renders, composites, and Photoshop. He's kind of an all-in-one package when it comes for this, and definitely a beast in his own realm. Anything you want to add, Dustin, before we wrap it up?
Man, it was great. There's a lot of great work today. Like it's, it's cool to see so many people at different parts of their journey, right? And this time, in this session, it was a little bit more, uh, a little bit more relaxed. Like most people that know me, and I'm sure JL's the same way. Like I can be very cutthroat and like have to do this and have to do that and like move forward in certain things. But the biggest thing is that like if you guys submitted your stuff here, like keep moving forward, right? Like there's some stuff that we saw today that we really couldn't give any feedback on. Like I would hire the person to do something for me right now. And there's other stuff that, we see that's like, hey, do these couple things, your portfolio is going to look better. But ultimately, you guys are all looking good for where you're at in your journeys. We like if you're just starting off and you're already submitting stuff for a portfolio review, the most important thing you can do in your entire journey is get a solid feedback loop, and that's ultimately why we did this. So yeah, I'm glad to be here and excited for the next time we can do it.
Yeah, Dustin touched a great point. Is you by submitting your portfolios just shows that you're open for criticism, and I think that's very important. Sometimes we tend to forget that, and the more we do it, the more we kind of think we know. But even to be honest, I'm going to bring something Dustin actually helped me to create in my own. Some of these renders I did the modeling work, but it was Dustin that actually took this to the next level. And even with me, I've been doing this for a while, and my renders looked okay. But I decided to get some feedback from him, and and he jumped in and did a couple of these pieces, and he really elevated my work. And regardless of how long you've been doing this, you probably got buddies that are better at texturing, better at modeling, better at compositing, rendering that you can reach out to, and a lot of times they'll help you out. So I do want to plug up CG Hacks here for a second. So let me throw that up. And basically, a lot of those renders that were done, not so much this one, but if we go here, a lot of those were actually done with his packs. And he like this is kind of what I handed off, and this was kind of the final result.
Oh, you're not showing your screen, bro.
Oh yeah, damn! I would have appreciated that like 5 minutes ago. So basically then they missed that. So CG Hacks has a lot of great content, a lot of VFX overlays, and some courses in the works. But he was able to use some of those overlays. If you're a little unsure what an overlay is, it's basically just an image of different effects. In this case, it's a smog pack with smoke. The great thing about Dustin's packs is that they actually have depth. If you download some off the internet or just a random picture, they're all flat. His actually have transparency via his alpha channels that actually give depth. And he took this and with his packs actually was able to create this. So that's kind of what he does for a living. And then he was kind enough to actually create products off the things he actually uses in his professional workflow. So check out CG Hacks. He has a lot of great stuff for free. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out in the chat, and definitely follow that man on Instagram. I think he earned it. He spent three hours of his his time. That's very valuable, and spend it, basically sharing his insights. So just give him a round of applause. Appreciate your time, brother.
Yeah, there we go.
For helping out the community. And also make sure you jump on the list. I currently have a deal where whatever sale he has, you're going to get 50% on top of that. And I'm just doing that for my subscribers. So jump on the list. If you get my email updates, you're going to get the deal. And if not, I threw a bunch of links there just to sign up. Anytime you sign up, you get on my list. And I'll show you, I'll send you a bunch of valuable information and deals like this for CGX. So 3 hours. I think I've been standing up for 3 hours, so my quads are on fire, man. Next time I'm going to sit down and be a little bit more chill like Dustin. But
yeah, I thought twice about that.
yeah, I'm paying the price. My knees are going to punish me tonight for that. But appreciate everybody that came through, showed love for this, and everybody that submitted. and we knocked everyone out. So that's amazing.
Awesome.
So appreciate you guys supporting 3D Beast Academy, the live stream. Dustin, appreciate your time, brother, and the valuable feedback you gave to the community. And that's what we're here for, is to empower the 3D artists and the community to elevate and make 2024 the year that you guys make your big break in 3D. So that's all that we have, folks. Appreciate your time, and I'm going to wrap it up, end the stream, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
Sounds great. See you guys.